Just the last thing, I want to just go through some housekeeping. So we want to make sure there's no self-promotion or pitching of any kind. Don't contact people outside of the user group without their consent. With Deb, Megan, and myself, feel free to reach out to us. And, if members share their use case at a meeting, don't share with the information without their consent. One other thing I wanted to bring up is that they are having the skill exchange, the Adobe skill exchange. It's coming up next week. And actually some of it's this week, but the Workfront one that I'm really interested in is next Thursday, August 21st. So if you haven't signed up, take a look at it. They have some really good speakers lined up for that session. Okay, I'm going to hand this over to John Conover from SyncPoint Digital, and he will tell us what he's going to introduce Matt to us.
Yeah, thanks, Mary. I appreciate it. And thanks, Deborah and Megan, for inviting us. One of the things that we thought might be useful for this group and a good topic, right, is just overall adoption. We understand that all organizations have their own custom work management solutions and workflows and ways that Workfront needs to work for their organization. But we thought we'd want to share just our best practices, our experience across many projects that we've done, and just kind of that table setting baseline adoption. So we asked if we could get involved and just to share that experience. And from SyncPoint Digital, we've got Matt Brada, who is our practice lead and with over 11 years experience and countless implementations in Workfront, and he's seen it all. So we put together a bit of a presentation we're going to walk through. And at the end, we'll have a Q&A and that we can get into answering some of the specific questions that some of you might be experiencing at your organizations. So Matt, if you want to take it from here.
Yeah, and John, right before Matt jumps in, if you guys do have questions in the meantime, if you want to enter them in the chat, we'll make sure that we address them. Yeah, Q&A time. So great. All right, Matt, take it over.
Okay, thanks. It's a pleasure to be here. Can everyone hear me okay?
Yes.
Okay,
Yep.
Everyone can see me okay?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, all right. Well, very good. It's good to be here. Many faces and names I recognize from the Workfront community, so I'm happy to be here. In case we have not yet met, my name is Matt Brada, and I've been in the Workfront community for, well back into the at-task days. So that's, definitely over a decade. I've seen a lot of Workfront implementations in that decade, and I've compiled something like I like to call the David Letterman top 10 list, if you will, of why Workfront implementations seem to struggle sometimes. We won't have time to go through all of them today. Instead, we're going to center our attention on one topic that Mary just said, adoption. I think this session is going to be interesting because we've all been there, right? We've all either struggled with adoption or with ourselves, with our own groups, or with our clients. You know how it goes. The company says, it's time for a new SaaS at our company. And some moan and some get excited. And most people are checked out already knowing it's going to fail eventually, right? I mean, there's kind of burnout fatigue in the SaaS industry. Too many times companies handle it like a surprise pre-dawn air raid attack. And guess what? The implementation doesn't go well. It's only halfway understood and short-lived. And why, right? Because it was forced. And since the users weren't involved, it's mostly chaotic. Leadership certainly wasn't involved. And so they don't have the answer. So voila, it fails. The naysayers are gratified. The managers are exasperated. And steady state continues. Has anyone heard this story before? Yeah, I'm hearing some chuckles. There's a lot of variations to the story, I know, but everyone's probably nodding in their own way because it's real life. Change is hard. It's hard for everyone and downright scary if we don't get in front of it proactively and get our leadership involved. So, Mary, since you're going to be my turntable here, let's go ahead and jump into it. Why Workfront could struggle, right? They don't have to struggle, but they could. So we're going to discuss some of the pitfalls here that that hinder Workfront implementations. And some you can see on the screen, others I'll voice over to you. But before we get there, I'd like to set the stage a little bit, because while this is a Workfront session, it's really also a session on SaaS in general. So while we, right, the collective us, might be on a singular mission to evangelize Workfront, maybe to mainstream it at our organization, maybe to convince another team to buy it, or maybe plan a net new implementation, right? You're just looking at Workfront. We have to recognize, no matter what angle we're looking at through this, we're not doing any of it in a vacuum, right? Not the least of which includes competing with other priorities, other SaaS implementations, other initiatives. Workfront is our big thing. It might not be the company's big thing. And most organizations struggle with managing the growing number of SaaS implementations and the SaaS applications that are out there, most of which are chosen without central oversight or general governance. And while the business units, they think they're bringing efficiencies, many times they're really adding in some way to the inefficiencies, and they're increasing costs. And now we've got multiple applications trying to do the same thing, and no one wants to leave theirs, and no one wants to retire the last one, and there's all these like competing things, and that just prompts organizations to then consolidate or replace tools more frequently. It's a classic dog chasing the tail story. And the sooner that we understand that we're not just fighting on behalf of Workfront, we're fighting a much larger thing, I think we're all going to be a little happier. Consider this before we change the slide. Consider this: 70% of new users abandon their implemented tool within, care to guess how long? It's astonishing. 3 months. Within 3 months. Most SaaS tools are ultimately removed or canceled inside the 2 to 5 year range. It is absolute lawlessness out there. Companies claim that they have strategies to manage all this, but the data tells us a different story. Flip the slide if you would, Mary, and we'll talk about it. Without doubt, user retention remains the number one challenge that companies face. Okay, so let's play a game for a second. How big, and you can put your answers here in chat. How big in dollars is the global SaaS market forecasted to reach 9 years from now? In 2034, how big globally do you think it is? $2.4 trillion. Okay. Any other guesses? Give me a counter guess. Okay, 1.25 trillion. John got the next one right, though, without even knowing it. Because of that global number, the US's count on that is $500 million, $412 billion to be specific. 81% of organizations now use a SaaS tool for at least one business process. And let me tell you one other stat that might blow you away. How many SaaS companies are actively in business today on a global scale? 2,500? That's a good guess. Any other guesses? 1,200? 10,000? Try 31,000 companies. 30,800 SaaS tools out there. So implementing Workfront or any enterprise work management platform, right, can and should be transformative, but it's also quite complex. Okay, so I've got my top 10 reasons why Workfront implementations can fail. And these are based on industry insights, They're based on the common platforms I've seen in my decade of doing this. I won't spend a lot of time on it, but I want to rattle them off to you real quick. Number one, lack of clear objectives. Without well-defined goals, the teams are going to struggle to align on the implementation on anything. And Workfront is no different, right? This leads to poor adoption, wasted resources, frustrated people. You know how it goes. Yeah, I see the smiley faces. Number two, inadequate or missing executive sponsorship, right? If leadership doesn't champion the implementation or the change that needs to happen behind it, it's impossible to drive said change. It will not happen. And speaking of change, poor change management ranks in at number three because Workfront's nature, very nature, requires significant shifts in workflows and cultures, right? If Workfront does any one thing good, it exposes bad behavior in a company, right? So if you don't have change management as a part of that, both behaviorally and from a process automation workflows, then you're automatically going to have a very steep wall to climb. Number four, insufficient training and funding. Anyone see this before? Users need to go one-on-one with their training, and one and done doesn't help. Okay, that's not enough. Ongoing and education are critical for supporting the long-term success. And when they don't keep up with it, it fails. When Workfront isn't updated to be equal with the current processes of the company, it fails. But the other side, the opposite side is also true, right? The over-engineering of it all, right? And that's number five, trying to replicate every single thing that you have in today's world in Workfront. It just leads to over-engineering. It makes it really complex. It doesn't simplify anything. So we need to be tactical and strategic in what we are trying to move forward. Number six, ignoring feedback from the user community. If the users aren't involved in the design and the rollout, do you think the system's going to meet their needs? No, of course not. They won't see themselves in it. They weren't a part of it, and they will fight it. It's human nature. No one wants to be told what to do. Number seven, lack of governance. It's easy for Workfront to get disorganized, to have inconsistent naming conventions, to have disparate templates, workflows that don't make sense to another team that they're trying to use, right? So there has to be some commonality governance. And those users need to be part of the governance. Number eight.
Hey, Matt, real quick, I apologize for interrupting. Yeah. And Mary, you're doing a great job being our Vanna White for the presentation. And I probably told you to go back to a wrong slide. We were just trying to match the slide. You're just reading from your notes in regards to problems. There's no top 10 list on this presentation, correct?
Yeah, correct. Okay. Mary's in the right place.
Okay, cool. Thank you.
And I'll fast forward. I'll say the last one is number 10. Yeah, you're on the right place. Failure to integrate. Any SaaS platform, especially something like Workfront that's not integrated, not anchored with the legacy systems, are great candidates to go away when management steps in and says it's time to consolidate. So, if you're a Workfront team, right, it needs to connect to Creative Cloud, to Slack, to your CRM, to Teams, things like that, right? Real simple kind of wins. Now, we're not here to talk about all the best practices of implementing Workfront. I understand that. But I wanted to share real quick my top 10, and I'm happy to share those notes out with you. But now, Mary, if you would, in fact, go one more. Yeah, perfect. So the companies here are so frustrated trying to manage these SaaS implementations that they just throw up their hands and they turn the responsibility over to the functional business unit. And the functional business units are excited, right? They're getting their way. If you're the team that wants Workfront, you're excited that you just got your way. But now the opposite is true, right? We don't have that corporate level governance anymore that comes from IT driven things. So we call this the citizen buyer effect, right? Where the citizen buyer are employees of the company, right? But they're outside of the IT department and they're off buying software for the teams. Makes the purchase relevant for the team, but it leads to eventual chaos because there's no governance to incorporate that. So what does all that mean? A lot of words to say. It's really difficult to get Workfront centered for growth, right? To be seated in a second team, a third team, another group when IT doesn't even know this thing exists. And I see this all the time. And we're in the middle of it and we can't really stop it. But here is what you can and should do. And this is really the point of the slide that we're looking at. Step one is don't try and do this in a vacuum. Pick your core team and pick a problem to solve. Meet with your team regularly. Listen to that team actively. Challenge constantly. And have metrics ready to defend and support the problem that you've all agreed is the right problem to solve. Now, your business justification for Workfront is probably multi-use case ready. But I challenge you to pick one thing that you can do exceptionally well and get a few wins on that thing. Don't chew off more than what you can sustain. You literally have one shot at adoption, and it's grave and it's of critical importance. I myself have been victim to this. Oh, we're going to stand up a full Workfront enterprise end-to-end system, invoke everything there is, and then we don't have the capacity, right, to get behind each of those things, and people get frustrated. Okay, so school of hard knocks there. Pick one thing, do it well. Okay, next slide, if you would. So don't try and boil the ocean when you're starting out. Okay, pick the problem that everyone agrees sucks, right? Create a reasonable, a defensible KPI to track it. Build a consensus, a consortium, and work on that thing, that one thing, and do that thing right. Prove a point, get a win, celebrate the win. You want to change adoption, do that. All too often, Workfront is just another thing and it's soon forgotten about. To make this work, we've got to integrate to our core systems, and we've got to keep people involved. We got to keep them motivated and believing it's in their best interest to make it work. And so on that note, grow your community. I call it the 3 Ps: positive, peer, pressure, and it works wonders. Don't launch a surprise attack, but rather grow a base of motivated, like-minded individuals and literally call them your power team, your power user team. Make them feel different, make them feel important. Listen to their inhibitions, work through those with them. What we are talking about here is as much behavioral change as it is business process change. Right? Follow me? This current slide here is step 2, and this is missed almost all the time. And why? For some reason, executives want this surprise cutover. And not one time in all of my years have I seen that strategy work. But you know what does work? A communication plan. So my recommendation is to do a 5-step drip campaign, I like to call it. A drip campaign spread out maybe across a 6-week or so, slowly explaining to users why it benefits them. They are used to hearing about how business decisions are in the best interest of the company. Sure, we all are. But when was the last time your company flipped the narrative and explained why it's good for you? So we have these messagings at SyncPoint, and we'd be delighted to talk to them about you, to share them with you. I brought along a snapshot, though. You guys want to see it? You want to see a snapshot of the drip campaign? Okay, go ahead. Let's show them, Mary. Example drip comms. Okay, so here's some examples. It's not an exhaustive list, and I'm sorry, they're very small. I'm just trying to put a lot on here, but you'll get the idea, right? They aren't long, they aren't technical, and they're most certainly not intimidating. In fact, they're meant to be the opposite of all of those things, right? They're short, they're friendly, and they're inclusive. For those personalities who are the explorers and the early adopters, make an offering to them to join your power team. And for those inevitable naysayers and, shall I say, Debbie Downers, we'll wear them out with inclusion. More than these, though, I encourage you to have roundtable discussions. Not everyone will agree, and maybe you won't be singing campfire songs together at the end, but I tell you, it sure beats the alternative to a surprise attack. Workfront always preaches in their sales pitches that work is the number one most misunderstood single asset of the company, right? And they're correct. But the same applies here. It's in your best interest to get your number one asset, who's your user, by the way, on board. And this is a great vehicle for you to do it. And I'm not talking just up to implementation time, right? But keep those drips going, right? Maybe they are on a monthly basis or a quarterly basis, but keep them going. And we'll touch on that more in a second here. If you could fast forward us one, or go one more. Yeah, this persona-based practices. So another major pitfall here is the, I don't know, I like to call it a 2-in-1, right? Where users can only absorb so much. How many of you have ever looked at an Oracle ERP main page back in the 90s and just went pale right there from overload stress? Right? Same here. So we need to control the experience. We need to give each persona just what they need, not 500 other things, because that's how it came out of the box, right? We need to learn the power of layout templates. The other thing is training. The initial training that the users took, it's probably not even relevant now. The platform changes just like your own business needs change. And just like you have these drip communications like we just talked about, you also need to have drip trainings, right? And make them fun. Start a Workfront Wednesdays training club. Have volunteers show up to showcase something they did in Workfront that makes their day-to-day life easier. Maybe it's a cool report they use, or a dashboard they built, or an alert, or a workflow. And honestly, it doesn't really even matter, right? The point is to celebrate them, get them on board, and win over the crowd by the 3 Ps, right? The positive peer pressure. Now, if you're looking, if you could go one more, Mary. If you're looking at doing an implementation right now, or you're in the middle of an implementation, I'd like you to take a look at this slide, right? Really pay attention to it. And I promise 2 more slides, we're done. Okay. Notice that what we're looking at here, by the way, is a development life cycle for a deployment. And I want to point out that it's not just the implementation consultant. It's not a one-sided street, right? If you look at the bottom half of this slide where it says estimated time needed from the core team, right? These are your power users, right? These are the people that we want to internally motivate, that we want on that governance council, that we want leading Workfront Wednesdays. Notice that there's a pretty significant amount of time from that core team. There's a few roles in here, 3 roles, like the PM, the sysadmin, and the training. Those are pretty specific, right? But what I want to draw your attention to is that third one down, right? That power users area, because that's an amalgamation of any number of people. There's no prescriptive persona or user profile, right? Of who would fit into the power user. There are exceedingly few examples of too many people being involved in standing up a Workfront instance. And there are thousands of examples of the opposite. Use your people. They will give you insights that you didn't even know existed. I promise. Okay, so I've been pounding on user involvement as the main pathway to adoption. Let's hit a couple of other angles, and then I'll close it out and turn it over to Laura. So if we could just go one more, some final thoughts. All too often, implementing Workfront is just another thing, right? And is soon forgotten about. So to make Workfront work, we've got to do a few things, and I'm going to recap them here, okay? We've got to integrate to the core business systems. We have to iterate on the platform, no differently than a DevOps team would, right? Business needs change, right? So Workfront needs to stay up to date with how you currently do business. We've got to keep the people involved, got to keep them motivated, believing it's in their best interest to make it work. And last but not least, we can't change what we can't measure. So if you want Workfront really to work for you and on your behalf, then you have to work with it too, right? It's a two-way street. So develop health dashboards that give you predictive indicators, not reactive indicators. I'm not talking about your projects behind, okay? But I'm talking more like, hey, you have a project coming up and these tasks don't have owners, right? Getting ahead of it. It's that kind of health metric. Or when we talk about people, right? You make a report that tells you whose logins are drifting off, right? Which teams aren't collaborating in the tool anymore. It's those kinds of soft metrics that give you the talking points to get ahead of behavioral issues. It also gives you the talking points to celebrate the people who are doing it. Reports aren't just for project metrics. They're pretty powerful for assessing team integration and behavior. Okay, and with that, I'm out. Mary, Laura, it's up to you.
Yeah, thanks, Matt, for doing that. Mary, if you want to just advance that one last slide, we can. I think it's really just kind of a Q&A situation, just final thoughts. Obviously, we talked a lot about implementation best practices, but as you guys all know, even if we've implemented the solution in one area, there's obviously always thoughts about expanding to different departments or different situations. So it's constantly evolving. And so kind of wanted to hit on that today. I did see one question come through for Alexandra, just talking about just different strategies to get people on board that maybe might not, maybe be hesitant to change. And I think, Matt, I think you hit a lot on that, on the 3 Ps and different communication and training, plans. But Matt, any final thoughts on that? Or Alexandra, do you want to expand that question a little bit more? Or do you think that you got some tips for that?
I'm sure I can be a little more specific. So I was especially interested in the part where he said that, when you're trying to migrate a process from, maybe it's from Excel and Outlook or something, and now we're going into Workfront. And sometimes users are really, really hesitant to make any sort of change to, for example, what information they're collecting, how they're collecting it, how they're storing it. And you just see if we just nobody's using this, and this, or, Workfront gathers it itself. Hey, can we get rid of that field? And they're just like, oh no, we are terrified to lose anything of what's happening right now. I see a lot of heads nodding. So I think that might have hit a nerve.
Matt, any thoughts on that?
Yeah, sure. I mean, this is all part of the kind of the change management, right? And ideally, something like this would be part of your drip campaigns. And I think the happy path answer to your question is that the people who are terrified of the change will have friends and colleagues who sit on this governance team, right? Who are bought into it and who can soft advocate for change as well. But even if that didn't exist, right? Maybe the next step would be to try it in the pre-prod environment, right? And give them a taste of comfort, right? Workfront now, as of, I don't know, just several months ago, have did you know this? They now have environment promotion, right? And for those of you who have been around before that, I mean, that's just such a big thing, right? We didn't have that for 1,000 years. So you could maybe do a testing with them, maybe calm them down with fingers on keyboards.
Yeah. Good tip. Thanks, Matt.
I had another comment that I wanted to also share for Alexandra. Just to tell you a little story, I had a very difficult stakeholder once, more than one, but this particular stakeholder, incredibly intelligent man. He made patents for cybersecurity software. Guy was so dang smart, and he's like, every system is terrible. You know, everything is terrible, and he was just, everything was all words, lots of word salad. And so I knew that the only way to get him bought in was to show him. That means on the side, I took their process and I built a little environment on the side. Mm-hmm. And then I showed it to him. And when I unveiled it to him on a Friday afternoon after a horrible week of not being able to manage his content people, and I showed him the dashboard I built to track all of his projects for a web page redesign, all the noise stopped because I solved his problem. Sometimes you have to do it, just do it, because when we talk about it, it's lost in translation. People, you know, they assimilate words differently. They don't see what you're saying. They're visual people. I know that, I don't know how many people have heard, oh, I'm a visual person. I'm a visual learner. I need to see it. So I found that talking at them was not the way to get buy-in. Instead, gather information around their process and build something on the side and say, hey, did I get this right? Is this kind of how it's going? So there is some need sometimes to just do it and see how they respond, because chances are even making a sample environment will take you minutes on the hour to give them an example of how to do something. You don't have to articulate the whole system, but if you can show them how it can be relatable, then your buy-in increment, or like not incrementally, but exponentially increases over time.
I know a lot of us are from the show me state here, so I think that tracks. So, yeah, exactly.
Absolutely.
Does anyone else have any questions or thoughts that they'd like to add?
Yeah, especially if anybody has any suggestions on what has worked for them in the past too with adoption, that would be great.
And I know this was kind of, you know, a little bit vanilla because we were trying to hit on so many, you know, just trying to appeal to a broad audience. But obviously, your guys' situations are so specific in the way that you use it. So, you know, we listed our contact information. If you have a question that's specific to your organization or need, I mean, feel free to reach out. We're happy to help and try and problem solve together.
You know, just to add a quick little blurb here and food for thought, right, for all the administrators that are online, and I'm sure you guys have dealt with this, and some of your organizations are larger, which are going to include new business lines, maybe an acquisition down the road, right? Like, and as Matt was explaining, right, like a little bit of the foundational, like, hey, if we get some of these drip campaigns, if we get this process and building new templates, if we get this way of absorbing those new individuals and rinse and repeat, it can help with those headaches, right? And And oftentimes you might find yourself in Workfront with over architecting, right? Like solutions, et cetera, eventually, so it's always good to rinse and repeat as you continue through and to get back to those foundational layers that have worked well and be engaged with those power users, et cetera. And it's just that ongoing piece, right? That you guys live day in and day out and getting other individuals in your organizations to adopt and just move, which is critical, right? Like, and just getting them to hear what you're doing. So just wanted to add in a little bit of that, right? We see that all the time. We understand that those are big challenges, and really just making sure that you've got that foundation put in place really helps.
So we did have another question that came in. How does environment promotion work? Matt, I don't know if you could answer that, or if there's anyone else on the call that could answer that question.
Yeah, I lost you on my screen. Can you hear me?
Yep.
Yes.
Okay. All right. Yeah. It's if you're the system administrator, if you go down to the controls at bottom, the very bottom section of setup, it's a new addition there called environment promotion, and you can promote your entire instance, or you can select what objects you want to move.
It's like an additional sandbox almost, isn't it? Like a separate environment. I just know once we got environment promotion, we suddenly had an extra sandbox link. So that was my assumption. I haven't gotten into like fiddle with it yet, but
Thank you, Megan. I haven't gone in there yet either to play around with it, so I was just curious if anybody else had any tips for us.
Yeah, and not many people have, right? It came out I think it hit the mainstream just a few months ago. I don't even know if there's training out there for it. I haven't gone out to Experience League to look.
Okay.
I can speak to that just a little bit. When we use the environment promotion, we create environments in Sandbox 2 and then have people test it before we put it in production. So you create the environment. So you go into the sandbox and you say you want to create a new package, and you can pull everything into that package: templates, reports, dashboards, custom forms, everything you've created in the sandbox. And then once you create it, then you go to production and you pull it into production. You install it in production. There's some interesting little clicks you have to do sometimes to make it work. You have to make it active, and then you can install it. So there's a little bit of quirkiness to it, but it's fantastic. So huge proponent.
Nice.
Thank you.
Yeah, overdue for sure.
If you want any help with that, please feel free to reach out.
Thank you, Lee. Appreciate that. This has been great information. I'm working on right now. We are getting our international team into Workfront for the first time, so that we can take a look at all the projects the company's working on. And so that environment promotion, I'm going to try that for rolling it out to the international team and for testing that. And also some of the information you provided, Matt, is going to be very helpful. I really like that drip campaign. I think that that's going to be key, that I need to create one of those. So appreciate everything that you've shown us today. Does anybody have any other questions? Then I think we're ready to wrap this up. Deb, do you want to close here?
Yeah, for sure. So our theme for the rest of the year has been engagement and adoption. And so what we're going to focus on the next session is we're going to have some project managers that actually work with Meg and myself at SS&C, and they're going to share how they've been driving user adoption by bringing a little fun to the process. They're going to walk us through their gamification approach, how they designed challenges, tracked engagement, and celebrated wins, and to make Workfront usage not just a requirement, but something that teams actually enjoy. Whether you're looking for ideas to motivate your own team, or simply curious about creative adoption strategies, you'll leave with practical tips and inspiration that you can put into action. So really excited to share that. We just learned something that they did over there that really, and this particular team has had a really rough go with Workfront, and she's really turned the conversation around. So we decided to invite her into this session to share how she did that. It's actually a pretty neat, very repeatable, pragmatic process to make it fun. So we thought that would be really great to share that with all of you. So
I'm looking forward to that session. And we're looking at doing that probably around October. And actually, Deb, I think it's a good idea that I'm even going to try to get our Workfront project managers to attend that session too.
Yeah, and I think that's really one thing that companies, and I came from a company previously where it was really hard to sell them on the idea of separating the powers, you know, an administrator and a project manager. And I'm working at SS&C now, and they really value, you know, we actually are hybrid people. Meg and myself can be project managers if we need to, you know, so we can kind of like go into a role and then we become system admins, but we've embraced it as something that all of us can do. But really it's good to separate those powers out because the amount of time needed to do administrative work is so mighty. But we definitely, the conversation around the day-to-day is paramount, you know, and so we have a synergy between those two teams where we're very dependent on each other to do what we do. And being able to gamify with international teams. We've got 6 lines of business. Our company's 25,000 employees. We've got 6 different marketing teams to manage inside of this environment. So being able to create a unified experience or some sort of connective tissue around collaboration and consolidation, we're always looking for that. And what she brought to the table it's like, wow, that's so easy. You know, so I'm really excited to share that because it's something that you can do, and it's not a lot of time or time spent pulling that information together, and it keeps everything relevant. So, yeah.
Great.
Yeah.
Thank you, Deb. So more to come on that. We'll get that out there probably within the next 2 to 3 weeks. We'll get the session set up for October for gamification of Workfront. Want to thank everybody for attending. We appreciate your time. We'll be sending out a quick survey afterwards to kind of get some feedback and also see what subjects you would want to see in the future. I want to thank our special guests, Matt, Laura, and John. We appreciate your time. And anybody can reach out to Deb, Megan, myself, or our partners at SyncPoint if they have any additional questions. We appreciate everybody.
Love it. Thank you so much.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you so much, everybody.
Thank
Have a great day.
You too.
Got to figure out how to leave now.